Welcome to Needham School Spotlight. I'm Dan Goodykantz, Superintendent of Schools. The Needham School Committee is getting ready to propose a new one-to-one personalized learning initiative beginning next year at High Rock. Joining me today to talk about this initiative, Aaron Pressman, a member of the Needham School Committee. Welcome, Aaron. Hey. Jessica Downey, a principal at High Rock. Deb Gammerman, our Director of Technology and Innovation. And 7th grade teacher Mike Cicolella at Pollard. I appreciate all of you taking the time to be here. Okay. So this one-to-one initiative is very exciting to think about, and actually this proposal is coming right after a successful pilot that's been going on throughout the district. Deb, what is the pilot, the iPad pilot that's been happening?
Okay. We've been having a lot of very exciting things happening at Pollard with iPads. We're in our second year of piloting. We have a cluster at 7th grade and a cluster at 8th grade. The 8th grade was piloting starting last year, so they're our pioneers of our pilot and really exploring and doing exciting things, where the kids in both 7th and 8th grade are using the iPads in the school for schoolwork in their cluster classes and taking them home and using them back and forth for their schoolwork. We also have high school students as part of the Greater Boston Project, the NEF-funded course, who are using iPads to transform their teaching and learning. And then as well, we have some students at High Rock that are exploring sort of organization and that homeschool connection. But really with all of this, what we're focused on is not the technology as a tool, but the technology as a tool, and to empower our students to sort of have personalized learning experiences, to get them more involved in participating in their own learning and taking control of that, as well as sort of help transform the teaching and learning so that we can help them master concepts that may be difficult for them to learn and really prepare them as 21st century students and learners.
You know, it reminds me that the pilot, one of the initiatives going back a few years for the pilot is the reality that we need to have a technology-rich classroom environment, but technology is rich, it is expensive, and it's also something that is really become, within the town of Needham, a challenge to fund. And so we have been encouraged, the school committee and the administration, to think differently by both the finance committee and community leaders to think differently about funding our technology. Is this does this fit in there?
Absolutely, that's very much a piece of that, because one of the things that we found that with our building projects, such as the high school, where we have 800 plus computers, at High Rock when we did that building project, there were 150 student laptops that are used by the clusters and other teachers, that we can't really afford to replace those, because when you get them funded through buildings, they come at a deep discount, that when we can't really afford to have all of that technology. And even since then, the need and demand and just what we do and what students do really requires more technology, and the town can't sustain it. So this will be a way for us to get what we need for students and do it in a way that that makes it sustainable for the town.
Well, and I think I want to hasten to point out that working collaboratively with the finance committee, the school committee really has taken the lead in saying, okay, here's a different way to try to integrate technology into the classroom and think differently about financing, and we'll get to that in a moment. Mike, you have been this year, I think, piloting in the 7th grade. So how did you get involved in that, and what does it look like?
So, at the end of last year, I was given the opportunity to be on this pilot with my fellow cluster teachers. All 4 of us and special educator are being trained with the professional development on how to use the iPads, and then our kids got them pretty early, at end of September, and they've had them to take home between school and the classroom. And so we've been just kind of experimenting a lot. It's as a pilot is, it's a lot of learning what works and what doesn't work, but I think we've really come to a lot of different ways that it can help, specifically organizationally and with certain applications that really help the students kind of get organized, but then also as far as different apps for different ways to look at things and different ways to kind of dive in. And so I'm learning them as the kids are, and so it's a lot of like, oh well, that didn't work, or oh well, this works better, and figuring that out at the pilot. And I think being in February now, we're really learning and kind of settling in onto what works and when certain types of applications and activities are really beneficial using it. And it's been a pretty smooth year after kind of figuring out. Sometimes I feel like a first-year teacher again, kind of getting that, but that's also exciting because you get to kind of revisit and think of different ways to do things, and so that's really great.
So now you're doing this pilot, but not by yourself. With your cluster teammates are in math, and everyone's participating in all the students. About 85 students or so.
Over 90, yeah.
Over
92 students. Yep.
And they have the iPads with them 24/7. So that's a tool that they're using.
School issued. Yep.
Yep.
And so they'll return them at the end of the year.
So what are the students saying? What do you see that's exciting or a challenge for them?
Yeah, and it depends on the student. A lot of students, I mean, some of them it's inseparable. You have to kind of coax them away from the iPad at times, and some students need a little more coaxing to kind of dive in and explore it as a tool. And so the reactions are very different and unique, as all of our students are different and unique. So we really have pretty much overall they've gotten into a routine of times when they're really useful. There's a couple of applications that get a lot of.
So what's an app that you use in social studies?
One of the best apps actually that's used across the cluster, like you said, it's in all the subject areas, is Notability. And Notability has so many different capabilities for students to be able to take notes, but also to be able to import PDFs and manipulate and draw on different things. They can do their images, bring in images and move them around that. And what also, as far as organizationally goes, Notability has the ability to take your notes and things and put them by subject and divider in certain areas. So that's really been great following that. Explain Everything is another great one. It's kind of a slideshow tool with a lot of extras, because you can manipulate and put in pictures and zoom in and zoom out, so the kids can, like, for example, in science, they had, I work with Rachel Cutterback on science, and she had this cell, and if you put it into either Explain Everything or Notability, the kids can kind of zoom in and kind of label parts of the cell, and then but also zoom out and see it full. As like when you're on paper, like whatever's printed on the paper, that's it. That's what you get. And so being able to kind of use those applications to do different things and manipulate things in different ways has been really helpful.
And you're seeing are students more organized? Are they less organized?
We're getting there. It's definitely a different way of looking at organization for a lot of kids. And first you have that battle of, okay, now having this tool, how to make sure I bring it to school, bring it to class, and have it charged and all that kind of stuff. Once we got over those kind of organizational bumps, now we're much more, they're bringing it consistently, and they're figuring out how to do things in Notability where they can sort all their stuff that way. The challenge is between the binder and the iPad, back and forth sometimes, that's it. But overall, what was on the iPad, it's there, and it doesn't get lost in bottom of the locker or any of that, kind of things. Whereas, especially, in middle school when they're kind of learning a lot of these organizational systems with paper, you go in their locker, sometimes it's pretty scary. But the iPad is really
everything's right there and to help organize. Well, that's one of the things I think is exciting, is to look at the possibility for providing organization. Jessica and Aaron, you participated with Deb on a one-to-one personalized learning committee. So, Jessica, what was the committee? Who was on it, and what was the charge?
It was a pretty well-rounded committee. We had school committee members, Aaron Preston and Sue Neckes, who were on. Susan Gillespie, who's in 8th grade social studies, was a teacher representative on the group, along with Lisa Chen, principal of Pollard, and Aaron Seacott, who's the assistant principal at the high school. Terry Duggan, director of curriculum and instruction, and Ann Gulati, our finance manager. So we had a lot of varying perspectives coming into the meeting. And I think what we did is we took a lot of the information we learned from the pilots that we've done so far. And we also examined where is our district moving with our technology plan, what are other districts doing in relation to a one-to-one movement. And you mentioned about the building projects, how High Rock and the high school, when they were opened, they really were fortunate in the building project to have the amount of technology that they have. So in the 5 years of High Rock, the technology there has gone from a nice to have to a need to have, because teachers have fully integrated the carts and their smart boards and their projectors all into what they're doing.
I think that's a consistent story throughout the district, certainly at Pollard as well.
Mm-hmm. That once it's put into the hands of teachers and they have the freedom to work with it, it becomes embedded in students' learning. And when we're looking at the opportunities for students, one thing that we've done this year in 6th grade is we've given every student access to Google Apps. So they can go in for the first time, have their own account, put up their student work, have it saved in the cloud, come back and retrieve it. We're no longer dealing with the lost flash drives or I couldn't print from home. That productivity has increased. We also have found that the collaboration among students has increased too, and that's what we're working on to be able to help students enhance their learning. And what we've also found with the iPad is the way that students can present their information and think differently and see things at a greater depth than they were able to do before, and take their learning at a step that's where they're paced and where they're learning. They can individualize that learning. Our intention as a committee is not to flip the classroom, and there's an extremely important role for that teacher, but how can we use this as a tool to support our students in organization and in thinking? And that's why it was decided by the committee to have this begin in 6th grade for a number of reasons. One, it's the entrance into middle school, that the use of a one-to-one device that would go for 3 years, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and that the developmental progress of students in 6th grade, what we focus on now is a lot about organization, executive functioning, study habits. Well, now how do we take the big, huge backpack and start to slim that down with items? It won't disappear, and it won't disappear overnight, but the goal is that we will be able to start shifting not only students but also teachers to, this could be your virtual notebook. This is your tool, just like I carry my iPhone and other people carry their BlackBerry. It doesn't teach me things, but it organizes me to think in different ways. So the committee worked on really planning out what is the vision for one-to-one implementation plan for the middle school and for the district. What would the timeline be for that implementation plan? How do we communicate to parents? How do we get out information sessions? How do we support our teachers in this plan? And then actually, what are the options for families? And that's what was presented to school committee for approval. And this would be a family-provided device in a number of different ways. Either it would bring your own device, as long as it matches specifications to support our programming, buying it outright through the school district, having a 3-year payment plan, so at the beginning of 6th grade, beginning of 7th grade, and beginning of 8th grade, or to have a loaner. We know that this might not be something that all families would be able to support, so we would have loaners for our families. Those families who buy into the program, it would include the iPad, it would include one of the most durable cases we've seen that, it's really those guerrilla commercials.
Now, is it a case that you're using now? Is it the same kind of case?
Yeah.
Yes, it is, the OtterBox Defender.
The Defender.
It's the Defender.
Okay.
So when you look at the Samsonite commercials where the girl used to throw them all over the place, we feel like that will
But our
be
students
the
are
same.
not doing that, are they?
No.
They're not anyhow.
And that's what I've also heard, that with the students at High Rock and the students at Pollard, as much as we worry, kids make mistakes, but they've been very responsible with this tool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So not only would it be the device and it would be the case, it also include all the apps for the 3 years. So we wouldn't be asking parents to be paying additional throughout the year to add an additional app to that. So it seems like it's a program we are really, really happy to present to families.
So, Erin, this is a program that we're asking, typically when students come to school, the school provides them with the books and materials. And by the way, books, I'm thinking as you're talking, in English and social studies, textbooks are going away. They're expensive, they're outdated once they're printed, often, not every single one of them, but they take up a lot of space in those backpacks, and the iPad is a tool to help manage some of the literature and the textbooks that are out there. But we provide, we're the providers. Students come off the bus and they come into the classroom. This program is suggesting the parents will actually be the providers of the tool. How did that come to be? What's your thinking around that?
I think this is one of the most challenging aspects of the whole program for the school committee. We had, as has been mentioned, financed a lot of technology purchases through overrides that we did for buildings. You get a great ability to add a lot of technology at that time, but replacing 800 computers at the high school or 150 laptops at High Rock is a huge burden on the town financially, and something that maybe there isn't necessarily enough resources to be able to do. So we do have precedent. We do ask parents to buy a very expensive calculator for kids in middle school now. We have fees. We have athletic fees, bus fees, those sorts of things. So I think an unfortunate reality of our time is that the school cannot provide every single thing. Now, surely there are families that may be challenged on that income issue, and we always will provide. Every kid is going to have a bus ride. Every kid is going to be able to have an iPad in this program. That's not the issue. But we are asking parents to step up. And one aspect of this is we need a lot of parents to step up where the finances don't work. Right. I think we need about 85%, isn't that right, Deb? To either bring their own or buy one.
So 85% of High Rock's parents and students need to bring their own or purchase or lease one through the school district. It seems then that leaves a lot of marketing to do and a lot of work ahead to make that happen. Can we make that happen?
I think we can make that happen. I mean, iPads and tablets in general are really becoming, the #1 computing device. They're very popular in schools. I think Apple said they've sold 7 million iPads into schools already in the last couple of years. One state we were talking about earlier, the state is talking about buying iPads for all kids in their schools. So it is something that is being used in education. It's a critical component of becoming a functioning member of society, and in the job market, in decades to come, you're going to need to have these skills. And the iPad, we've seen in the pilots amazing things being done with them, using it as a camera, using it for speakers notes, using it to connect to the internet. It really is something I think that a lot of kids will get huge value out of.
So let me, Michael, are we going to do? Is the intent here to do away with teachers? We're just going to have kids in front of screens. Is that?
No, not at all. I mean, I really think it's more of like what Jessica was talking about, helping them get organized, reducing the clutter, and then transforming the way we teach them, not replacing the way we teach them.
Right.
And I think. I can understand maybe why some teachers might have that kind of anxiety around it, but no, there's no way. I still feel just as important as a teacher with the iPads in my room as it did when I didn't have the iPads in my room. But yeah, a first-year teacher, I've got to learn how to use the tools a little bit differently and do all that. But it's definitely something that you can't just give a kid an iPad and say learn. And it wouldn't work.
Well, what I've seen at Pollard and what I've seen at the high school with the students who are using the iPad, in fact, with teachers, some students, because it is more personalized and individualized, are working on something. And the teacher now has the time and the freedom and the ability to be able to work with a smaller group. The student who gets it and is moving forward can do that. In the old-fashioned classroom, everyone had to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've really found that's I say probably one of the biggest things with assessment, using the iPad to such apps such as Socrative or at Modo, where I can do a quick what teachers would do with exit slips or dipsticking kind of strategies to get a sense of where certain students are. I can do that in an instant and immediately differentiate on the spot because I know who gets it and who doesn't get it, and so I can go meet with that small group of students while the other students are doing something challenging. Absolutely.
It seems to me it's going to help our teachers will become even more invaluable in this way. They already are, but they're going to be able to really zero in on and work in ways that they haven't been able to before. Right. This actually, I think, really complements the classroom teacher's role and really makes it clear that that human interaction is even more critical.
Right, and that's actually part of what we found last year when we did gather data from the students and teachers and parents that were involved in the 8-3 pilot last year, that the teachers did find that they did have more opportunities to work individually with students because if kids were, one group of kids was looking at Khan Academy and doing a particular piece that they needed for their math enrichment, and another group was working, another student was working on a different aspect, that the teacher had the flexibility because all of the kids were engaged in doing what they needed to be doing, that the teacher could, work around the room and meet with kids individually, do check-ins, do more conferencing, do things that were really valuable to the whole class instead of doing that sort of stop stop with one question that stops the whole class from moving on. And teachers really like that. The kids found that useful. Parents also, talked about that in the focus groups and in the survey where we asked them for, what they were seeing from their children and what kinds of things were happening. So it does really reinforce some of what Mike is talking about and what we're really looking for in terms of the pilot.
So Jessica, this pilot's going on at Pollard right now, and to a lesser degree at the high school. High Rock is getting ready for this. What are you doing at High Rock to prepare the teachers first of all, and then we can talk about how we're marketing this to parents. But I'm curious about the training and what's happening. What's the faculty think and where are they at?
Well, it's interesting. We gave every teacher at High Rock School an iPad at the beginning of January and said, at our next meeting, just play with it between now and then, explore it. Some people have their own iPads at home. Other people have never even touched it. So we spent the first month, and when we came back with another PD, we did a check on what have you learned, what have you found, and then did a demonstration. We used Socrative, and we had our teachers be the students, and we demonstrated how we could gather feedback very quickly. But we found that we have a wide range of skill and knowledge base in our teaching, in our faculty.
Sure.
So just as our teachers need to differentiate the lesson for our students, we have immediately found we need to differentiate our professional development for our staff. The staff who know how to do this were in the back and they were trying to help out, but they weren't gaining. Yet the staff who didn't know felt a little overwhelmed, like it was going so fast. But the good thing is they're excited, they're willing to take this risk, they're seeing the value for students in their learning. They're just trying to mesh, how does this value match to what my day-to-day will look like, and how do I do what I do differently? So we have developed a professional development planning team of teachers with a broad range of teachers, those who have great knowledge and experience and those who don't, to sit with us to really get a sense of what the teachers' needs are, so we can then make subgroups of teachers to do training. Our goal is in next year to be very thoughtful of our professional development days and our faculty days, where we will be in our groups and maybe teach them Evernote or teach them how to use a book creator, and then set them off with the students and say, in the next month or so, try this once. We understand that this is a commitment we're asking students and families to make who are exiting 5th grade into 6th grade, and that the learning curve of the teachers are happening simultaneously to the children receiving it. But we also know that there's strength of knowledge that has already been put in place in grades 7 and 8 so far with their pilots, that our students' focus in 6th grade will be really strong with these iPads.
What you've started to do a lot of planning around the training for teachers. Mike, and Deb, what did some of the training this year look like, and what's in store?
Well, I've been attending with my cluster mates and various people who are doing the pilot at the high school in High Rock. These ed tech teacher trainings. I don't know if that's an outside consultant that we've hired to come in and do the professional development, but it's been really awesome. So we have 3 or 4 face-to-face kind of all-day kind of meetings with an excellent specialist who is a teacher, a real teacher who's used all this stuff in the classroom.
That's what you need.
And so he's come in and he's done a lot of workshops with us. And then a lot of it is also online modules where we go and explore some of the apps on our own and kind of do that. And so taking that, compared with actually having them this year to use with students has been really, I think, you can do a lot with professional development, and you have to teach a lot of things, but a lot of the learning comes from implementing it with the students and seeing what it looks like in the classroom. So it's great that they have an actual teacher doing it. I think that helps a lot with it. So we've attended those trainings and done those modules and tried the stuff out in the classroom and see what works with our students.
So it's clear that the district is committed to providing the training and the support that our teachers need to make this classroom experience really exciting for our students. So it's a commitment it's a commitment of teachers to get involved in the training, but also they'll have to do a pivot in the way they provide some instruction.
Absolutely.
And so that will be a change. So that's a commitment on their part. It's a commitment on the community's part to to provide these iPads so that we can be successful, because we just can't possibly do it. It reminds me, and I'm thinking, Aaron, as I think about the budget, because I know we're in the midst of budget season now too, one of the things we'll really have to talk to fifth grade parents about, next year many of them will be facing a bus fee for the first time. And they will also be facing a potentially the cost of this iPad. So we really have to think about, making sure that they understand why we're doing these things, that we're going to support them. But it is a big ask of the community, and we'll have to think about that and really encourage folks to participate. And those who don't have the means, we will provide a loaner for them. So, Deb, what's happening this spring? How do we move this forward? What are generally some next steps?
So there's lots of things happening, and I think one of the key things is really how we inform parents and let them know and understand what it is that we're really doing with these iPads. Because at every, at the launch of each year, when I've launched with 7.5, I've done these parent information sessions where I talk to the parents about what's going to happen over the course of the year and using the iPads. And one of the things that seems is that a lot of people think of iPads and have used them more as toys rather than tools. So I think a really critical piece is having parents and families understand what it really means to be using it and how we're using it, hearing about things like Notability, hearing about Explain Everything and Book Creator and how these things are being used in the classroom is essential. But the way for them that we want them to see and hear about that is from students and is from teachers. So we'll be launching a website that will have some video of classrooms and what's happening so that there's an understanding, having maybe a technology night where families and people can come in and see and hear directly about what's happening. So those are key things. And just another thing, another sort of lens of looking at it is that one of the questions I often will ask parents at these information sessions is, do you use technology professionally in your jobs? And 95, most of the hands go up. And then I ask parents, well, how many of you share that device with someone else on a daily basis? Do you have your own device, or do you have to share it? And they realize that no, they don't. They wouldn't be able to get their jobs done if they didn't have their own device. So I think understanding just how embedded technology is and sort of making that connection to what it would be like for families or for students where they really do need it because it is so integral in our culture is an important piece of it.
Well, it's really trying to integrate it into the classroom experience.
Right.
And I think as we conclude here, it is very exciting. We really want to market this in a positive way to our fifth grade, incoming sixth grade parents, because we need 85% of them to buy into this, and that'll be important. But I think that my takeaways from this conversation is that there exists an opportunity with the one-to-one initiative at High Rock to empower student learning, to encourage productivity, engagement, and organization by implementing a tool like the iPad in the classroom. So we'll be very excited to see as this takes off in the spring and get this tool into the hands of other students. So thank you, Mike, for sharing your experiences, and Deb and Jessica and Aaron for your leadership around this, and we look forward to it unfolding. Thanks very much.
You.
Thanks, Dan.